everyone wants your Bitcoin, right? And if you use that as your frame of reference, nothing anybody does in order to get your Bitcoin will surprise you. The state is bending the knee to us. It's us realizing that we can judo our way out of a fight with a behemoth. And like, is it smart to get trampled to death by the elephant, or is it smart to step out of the elephant's way? We are coming with a radical new idea, which is same rules for everybody. One fair rule set to rule them all. For the next 300, 400, 1,000 years, I think we have something that can't be corrupted.
Mr. HODL.
Let's do it, sir.
I'm addicted to shooting now.
Yeah? I know.
That was so much fun. Can you see, I've got like this little red dot there.
Is that from where the scope hit you?
Yeah, I was when we were shooting the sky. You didn't warn me about that. Took one straight to the face.
Was that on your first one or like later on?
It was when the stock was still short. So I was like super close.
You just had your eye too close.
Yeah, fucked me up.
Getting scope fucked is part of shooting. So
that thing was powerful.
Yeah. Was that your favorite gun, or which was your favorite?
Probably that one. I think the one with the suppressor was the coolest.
Totally.
The AK was fun.
You were hitting very well from. I have to say, you did very well, like for a first-time shooter from long range, because you were hitting like not like super consistently, but pretty decent from like 400 yards.
Yeah. I found the longer one easier than the shorter one.
Yeah.
Because like the way the scope lined up, it was closer on the longer one. Mm-hmm. Found that easier.
It's out of like 20 rounds, I'd say you hit like 5 at like 400, which is like pretty legit your very first time shooting.
I'm a marksman now.
Yeah.
What can I say?
Does it did it give you a feeling of like sort of power and competence? Like did you have the moment where you were kind of like a little bit nervous, a little bit freaked out?
I was shitting myself.
Yeah, but then once you're like handling the firearm effectively, then you kind of, it flips and it's like a powerful feeling.
Yeah.
Was that?
It's like quite cathartic.
Yeah.
Like it's like almost meditative in some way.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you're pretty chill after doing it.
Yeah.
But the one that looked cool, the one with the suppressor, whatever that was, I was terrible at that. I broke your sign. I broke your target.
That was
I was like, why is this thing ricocheting?
That was a Daniel Defense PDW. It's a 300 blackout gun. So it's like an AR style gun, but meant for suppression or whatever. And you did pretty good on that, man. I have to say, like in general, for an Australian, like pretty solid.
I'm English. I don't know if that makes it worse or better.
You're English Australian, so it's double bad. You know,
it was fun though. But it's pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
Like the only way I'd done it before is in like an indoor range just with a handgun.
Oh yeah, this felt like way less rules.
It was like rogue as fuck. And
I'm not giving many instructions either.
You were good for that. You did give me a lot of instructions.
Yeah.
Like so the one I'd done it before with a shotgun in Australia. Like clay pigeon shooting.
Like clay, yeah.
And they gave us basically no instructions. I remember being stood there with my gun. I probably had like my finger on the trigger or something, and I so nearly like shot the floor.
Yeah.
And so like that gave me a really bad experience. And I was like terrified of that. But you were good. It was fun.
Finger straight, always.
Finger straight.
Yeah.
Ask Jenseth.
Yeah. Finger straight. Don't flag anybody at the range. I can't. I don't know if I gave you that much more instruction. I gave you how to hold it.
Yeah.
Finger straight. Don't flag me. Point the gun down range.
What does flag me mean? Point at you.
Flag is when you accidentally point the gun at somebody.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
When Jenseth came on the show and he brought all his guns,
he was flagging you. Yeah.
He got in so much shit because he was stood there with his finger on the trigger. He should know better.
He should. But he also knew the guns were unloaded, and also Jenseth
he was probably just doing.
He's probably trolling
to trigger me.
Yeah. Does it make you wish you had guns in Australia?
No, probably not. Like I think the thing that Americans maybe misunderstand when like British people or Australian people say they don't want guns is that like I get it here. It's part of the culture. Like if I lived here, I'd probably have guns because they're cool and fun. But if you try to introduce guns to a culture that doesn't understand guns, I think it would be a shit show.
Well, it's a shit show here if you haven't noticed. Like, but that's like the messy price of freedom, right? Because there's no country or culture on earth without firearms. None.
Yeah, but imagine like...
So Australia doesn't have firearms, but what that means is civilians don't have firearms. The state has firearms.
Yeah.
And so the civilian population is at a tremendous disadvantage to the state.
Yeah.
Right? And, people say, well, it's a representative democracy. And it's like, is it? Did people vote for all of those like draconian measures during COVID? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Who was making those decisions? The same people that have the guns.
But the thing I find hard about that, like, I don't disagree with the sort of statement, but it's like US had fucking terrible COVID laws as well, and like the guns did nothing.
Well, That's interesting because, yeah, I mean, listen, the guns are a bulwark against tyranny. So sometimes people who live outside of America don't understand this and they think, well, you guys got guns, but they still did all this shit to you. And it's like, we're not really that keen to kill all our neighbors, you know? I mean, it's really an extreme thing to bring the guns out in America, other than for the purposes of self-defense and hunting and normal uses of guns, right? To bring the guns out in a two-way anti-government stance is like, that's a bad world for
everyone.
Me, for you, for our children, for the entire society. So it really is a break in case of glass emergency measure. And that's like a stereotype about Americans. Like, we don't use guns to solve our problems, right? We have guns as a bulwark against tyranny. And the threat of violence is often more powerful and important than violence. Because if you look at when the COVID restrictions got lifted, very few people talk about this actually. And it was interesting to me because the Canadian trucker protest was huge for freedom worldwide, and the farmers in France had figured out the same thing, which is that like, we are important. We're the backbone of society. And if our trucks don't move, society doesn't work. And also we can park our trucks along the border and shut down commerce.
Yeah.
And they did it peacefully, right? Which was the right way to do it. But there was a lot of talk because of the Canadian convoy about an American convoy. And DHS and FBI were rightfully panicked about that because an American convoy would not have been as peaceful as the Canadian convoy. I think everybody knows that. And the minute there was this talk about an American convoy, suddenly all the restrictions started to lift.
Oh, I didn't know that's actually how it played out.
Basically, nobody caught that in real time, but I was watching it in real time and like...
Why? What was the threat from like in the US?
Well, the idea was just that there would have been a Canadian-style convoy, but it would have been violent because everyone has firearms, you know? And so you can't stop an American convoy the same way you can stop a Canadian convoy. And there's a lot of collateral damage, and who knows how violent it could possibly get. And so I think at that point too, it was like lockdowns never did anything. Masking never did anything. These were all perfunctory, you know, imaginative measures.
Yeah.
It was safetyism, or it was like hygiene theater. And so like, you know, stand 6 feet apart. Somebody just made that up.
Yeah.
It means nothing.
Oh, the craziest in Australia, you could sit in a bar without a mask on, but you couldn't stand in a bar without a mask on. Like, it's the most stupid rules.
So I would do this just to make, you know, as an example, like ghoulish overkill. We had the same rule in America, and I would run through the bar and sit down and rip my mask off and be like, it didn't get me. I'm safe. Like that, you know?
Yeah.
And everybody could tell that I was making fun of it, obviously. But like, yeah, it was fucking ridiculous. And it was tyrannical. It was tyrannical in almost every country on earth, you know?
But when it comes to exporting guns to these other countries, like I have no right to say what America should or shouldn't do, but I don't think the US should get rid of guns. Like, it's part of your culture, and I totally understand why you want to own guns. But imagine if Australia had guns, or if England had guns, like, and everyone in England or Australia was me at the range yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, that's the problem. It's like no one knows what to do with guns.
You did pretty good right away, by the way.
But I mean, in terms of like the safety protocols and things like that, and like none of that stuff is like inbuilt knowledge in Australian and English people, because it's never had to be.
We have much more of a gun culture here in the US, and a lot of the guys that are like range safety officers are former military, you know, guys that were part of the global war on terror, et cetera. And so, yeah, and they grew up hunting with their fathers, and, you know, people go to the range. Going to the range as like a small boy is like the most fun thing you could do, right?
Yeah.
And so, or hunting deer.
Wait, can kids go to the range?
Yeah, totally.
So how old do you have to be to shoot a gun? Can any age?
There's really no age. I mean, if you were doing it under, like, let's say 6 years old, I think that's pretty dangerous and irresponsible. But I think with proper guidance and supervision, you could bring, like, I plan to bring my kids when they're a bit older, probably around 10, you know, and work them up very slowly. Especially, I think if you have daughters, like, you can teach your daughters Brazilian jiu-jitsu all you want, but like, there's no way a 120-pound female is beating like a 250-pound man. But with a gun, guns are a great equalizer, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, listen, here's the thing though, is like, there's this new idea from J.D. Vance and other people on the American side, which is like, let's stop bullshitting. Like, we are NATO. We're NATO. You guys are not NATO. We're NATO, right? And we're annoyed that you all don't have freedom. And we would like you to have free speech, and we would like you to have gun rights. Like, the rest of it you can work out amongst yourselves, but like, we believe these are important to the defense of freedom worldwide. And we don't like how captured the European and Australian populaces are. and how captured about half of the American populace is as well, right?
I mean, it's funny though, like when you talk about guns to an English person, like if there was a referendum on whether we should bring back guns to England, like whether you think it's a good thing or not, irrelevant. Like I promise you that would be like 90+% would say no.
Oh, for sure. For sure. No, we're going to force it on you guys.
How are you going to force it on us?
No, I mean, we're not actually, but like the American perspective is we can't understand why the rest of you are not normal like us. That's the American perspective, right?
Yeah.
It's not like this feeling of superiority, which it often gets bandied about as, but it's more this like, why aren't you normal? Why don't you like to say whatever the fuck you want and shoot guns?
I mean, I think we should talk about the free speech thing, but like the funny thing on
1A and 2A are connected because 2A backs 1A.
Yeah, I get that. But like when you, like my view on guns is probably extreme in Australia and England, even though I'm saying Australia and England shouldn't necessarily have guns.
And what is your view? Just a very centrist?
Americans should have guns.
Yeah.
Like that is an extreme view.
That's extremist?
I don't actually know if that's true, but I think that would be true.
Wow.
I think most people would say, like, look at the school shootings, America shouldn't have guns. It's basically that simple, I think.
Yeah. That's it's a really good thing we don't have to listen to you guys.
But like, it's understanding the trade-offs, I think. Like, because school shootings are obviously dreadful. They happen relatively infrequently, probably, but they are huge news when they do happen.
The trade-off is tyranny, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the big trade-off.
So do you think that England and Australia are tyrannical?
Completely 1000%. There's not even a question in my mind.
Why?
I mean, you can be arrested for the most banal Facebook posts in either country. If you question the ruling authority or regime at all, you can be gulagged for years of your life. So yeah, you guys live under communism, tyranny. You live under socialist tyranny. And like, you're all kind of like, you don't want to believe it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing is like, you don't want to really let it in, but like looking from the outside, yes, it's completely tyrannical. And when I talk to the average Brit, for instance, they don't know most of these stories about, mothers being arrested for silently praying outside of an abortion clinic. But these are things that are happening in the UK.
I didn't know that happened.
Yeah. You cannot pray within, I think it's 100 feet or 200 feet of an abortion clinic in the UK. You cannot silently pray. And if your home is within the 200 yard or whatever it is radius around this abortion clinic, you cannot pray in your own home.
Is that true?
Yes, 100%. So if you are a Catholic, okay, who does not believe in abortion, you're anti-abortion, and you live within 200 yards of an abortion center or whatever the mandate is, I don't know the specific number, you are not theoretically allowed to pray in your own home. That is true.
So I'm not going to fact check you right now. I've not heard that, but if it is true, that's fucked up.
It's true.
And the things that
you will find, when you do fact check me, you will find people who have been arrested for praying in front of abortion centers silently.
Yeah, that's why.
Which means, in effect, they are just standing there.
I mean, that's thought police.
Yeah, it's also satanic. You know what I mean? It's like, I can't think, George Orwell was proven, I can't think of anybody who's been proven more right than George Orwell.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's fucking scary.
Yeah.
On the Facebook post thing, like that's definitely happening. I've seen it as well.
And that's bad.
It's really bad. And you're definitely right in saying that I think most Brits aren't necessarily aware of that. Although the ones that are like livid about it, understandably. The thing that I think has been interesting about Trump is, again, whether you like him or not, irrelevant to this argument, is that he's changing conversation, I think.
Yeah.
Even in Australia and the UK. So like in Australia,
you guys need a Trump.
I mean,
Crocodile Dundee, style Trump.
I think populism's spreading, and I think it will continue to spread. Because it's changed the discourse. So in the sense that people would always be reluctant to have conversations that, I mean, as Bitcoiners, we have all the time.
By the way, you know what's another word for populism? Democracy.
Fair.
I mean, literally. Yeah. What's the difference?
But I think the key differentiator, I think, is like what's led to a populist getting voted. Yeah. And so like in the UK, obviously Reform are like the semi-Trump aligned party.
Yeah.
And they've just done incredibly well in local elections, and probably I would guess their favorite or close second for the next general election. And so like I think Trump has changed the dialogue in these countries.
Yeah. Which is good.
It is good.
But there needs to be a strong, figure who emerges in these countries in order to fix some of the rot that has set in.
Yeah.
Like if you're in the UK, for instance, you are effectively being run by people in Brussels. Like you're not really being run.
Well, we're not part of the EU anymore.
That's true. That's true. You're right.
But the one thing that
it's more true of Ireland is what I was thinking.
Yeah, and the one thing that's like very clear is that Westminster.
By the way, Brexit wasn't a clean break either. Though,
oh no, not at all.
Right. I mean, so there's still a lot of globalist bureaucrats trying to get their teeth into the UK.
1,000,000%, yes. And like, but what is clear is that Westminster runs the UK, and the people in the north. Like, there's always been talk of like a north-south divide in the UK, and like these are by no means direct comparisons, but if you tried to compare it to the US, it would be like the north would be more like the south here, I think.
Yeah,
and like what has become clear is that north-south divide is getting worse and worse, and I think people in the north just intrinsically they just know that. You can just feel that, and so I think that's going to be another thing where I think Reform are going to get elected next election, and I think that's because they're the only people actually talking to the people. And that again, I feel like Trump was a massive catalyst in this.
I mean, I hope that the rest of the Western world can come to their senses. I mean, I think I've heard it from Europeans broadly that they are jealous of what we have going on here because it's a move back to sanity. It's a move back to common sense. Because if you've gotten to the place in your society where you're talking about how it's okay to chop off children's penises, you've gone very, very, very far down a deep, dark road, or where you can't pray in front of an abortion clinic, right? Or you can't have unapproved thoughts on Facebook or a moment of human weakness. Like in a lot of these cases in the UK, there's one woman in particular said something to the effect of, there had been a migrant who had stabbed a young girl or something, and she had said, I don't care, burn them all. I don't care if that makes me racist, whatever. And then she went for a walk and deleted the post. So she had a human emotion. Is that worth years in prison?
This episode is brought to you by CoinKite. CoinKite make the best, the most secure Bitcoin hardware wallets that you can possibly buy. So they have this one right here, which is the Cold Card Mark IV. They're Bitcoin only. They have 2 secure elements, verifiable source code, completely air-gapped by design. They really are the best hardware wallet that you can buy. And they've also just come out with the Cold Card Q, which is this one here. It has all the same security features as the Mark IV, but it has a few new features. So it has a full QWERTY keyboard. If you're listening, this thing looks like a old school BlackBerry. Much bigger screen, which makes it way easier to use. It has an NFC reader, a QR code scanner, and it even has a secure password manager built in, which I really love. If you don't have a Cold Card, you're doing it wrong. Not only that, people keep asking me about this behind me. This is the block clock. Right now, it's telling me it's $105,000 Bitcoin. That's also made by CoinKite. So head over to coinkite.com. If you use code WBD, you get 5% off store-wide. So go to coinkite.com and use code WBD. This episode is also brought to you by Iron, the largest Nasdaq-listed Bitcoin miner using 100% renewable energy. Iron are not just powering the Bitcoin network, they also provide cutting-edge computing resources for AI, all backed by renewable energy. We've been working with the founders, Dan and Will, for a long time now and have been really impressed with their values, especially when it comes to their commitment to local communities and sustainable computing power. So whether you're interested in mining Bitcoin or harnessing AI compute power, Iron is setting the standard. Visit iron.com to learn more, which is IREN.com. This episode is brought to you by River, the best place for Bitcoiners and businesses to buy Bitcoin. With River, you can set up zero-fee recurring buys, making stacking sats effortless. And while you're waiting for the perfect buying opportunity, River lets you earn daily interest on your cash balance paid in Bitcoin, which outperforms most high-yield savings accounts. But what really sets River apart is their dedication to security. You have peace of mind knowing that River has monthly proof of reserves and holds all Bitcoin in multi-sig cold storage. And with US-based phone support, you'll always have someone on hand ready to help. To find out more about River and to open an account, head over to river.com/WBD and earn up to $100 in Bitcoin when you buy. That's river.com/WBD.
Just to play devil's advocate on that, the reason that she was arrested was because it was seen as like inciting violence.
Right.
I don't know where like free speech line get drawn.
In America, we are very... that's a very high bar to prove incitement to violence. I mean, very high. It has to be very specific, very targeted. So, for instance, you can't just say kill them all. Like kill them all in America is like you could say that all day long.
There's context to it though, because like there were people surrounding the hotel, like throwing things at the hotel. Like it was already boiling up. Again, I don't have like a strong opinion on that case in particular, but The interesting thing you mentioned like trans stuff in the UK. That's actually been they're far.
There's been a move back to sanity on that. Yeah,
100%. Like from my opinion, like I guess it's a libertarian style opinion is that like if you're 18, do what the fuck you want. I don't really care. Like you live your life however you want to live it. But when it comes to kids, like
100%, I'm in agreement with you as well.
And the UK have put in some really sensible laws around what you can actually do with children who identify as trans or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's one area where I think we're way ahead of the US.
Yeah. J.K. Rowling is out. That's like her big thing.
I mean, she's got good opinions, and people fucking hate her for it.
They hate her so much.
But it's funny, like you say that we need a Trump-like figure, and probably the closest thing to a Trump-like figure we have in the UK is Nigel Farage, who is
and he's pretty far from a Trump-like figure, you know,
closer than the rest of the politicians in the UK. And he's again widely hated, and some people love him. Like it's super, super divided, like all populists probably are. He was obviously the man that was like the spearhead of Brexit. Yeah. And he's going to be here at the conference, I think.
Oh, yeah.
In Vegas.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about rather than free speech, although that was interesting, is like Bitcoin's changing completely. Yeah. And I feel like
I know we have like the vice president's going to be here, and this is our second year in a row with Secret Service security checks.
It was the last year I remember leaving the conference, and I think I tweeted Bitcoin's changing. Yeah. And like I think that was a really pivotal moment. And so now, who are the big speakers this year? Like if you look back to 2021, it was like Nick Szabo, and now it's JD Vance. Right. And what I can't decide upon is I think that's probably inevitable at some point that the politicians come to Bitcoin, but like if that's a good thing. And I don't know where you kind of fall on that.
It's tough it's tough like good, bad. I don't want to make like a moral judgment on like what is inevitable. You know, central bankers are going to own Bitcoin. Yep. Is that good, bad? I don't know. It's inevitable. It's like in that same category. Is it good, bad that the price is, $100,000 a coin, $110,000 a coin, whatever it is right now? I don't know. That means a lot of people can't get access to a Bitcoin, right? Like because they've been priced out of it. Is that bad? I don't know. So to me, I think about it less in a moral framing and more as like just realistically and practically what is occurring, right? And realistically and practically what is occurring is it looks like the state is beginning to, I don't want to use the word subsume Bitcoin, but it's attempting. It's beginning an attempted co-option of Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. It's in its infancy right now. Most of the actors in the state who are doing things like a Bitcoin strategic reserve aren't even really that aware of what they're doing. Yeah. And often these things are being pushed by Bitcoiners, right? David, whose conference it is, right? Mm-hmm. And many other people on Twitter, including myself. I actually think it's a good idea to have a Bitcoin strategic reserve. And I think that we have a friction of that inside of Bitcoin because there are a lot of Bitcoiners who are gearing up for a fight with the state that isn't going to happen, or at least is not going to happen in the way that they thought it was going to happen.
This is not the state banning Bitcoin. It might be them more slyly co-opting Bitcoin.
Yeah, which is, that's how the state actually operates. Yeah. The state attempts to co-opt things. Yeah. It doesn't, it'll ban things that are obviously horrible and everybody supports. But if something, lives large in the world and the people want it, then what you do is you try and ghettoize it. Mm-hmm. So, gold as a store of value, for instance, got ghettoized, right?
Explain what you mean by ghettoized.
Ghettoized is a specific term that basically means to put something over there and consequently diminish its value by doing so, right? And so like, if you look at gold as a store of value, like most of the gold is owned and controlled in Fort Knox. If you believe it's there, there's a whole conversation about whether it's really there or not.
I don't think it's.
But like, let's say like if you believe, at one point the U.S. government had a lot of gold in Fort Knox, right? Something like 80% of all the gold in the world. If you look at the tech companies, which were supposed to come out of the dot-com boom and become our, neoliberal saviors in the information age, completely got owned and controlled and became a paramilitary arm of the state, right? And so during COVID, they were like the number one apparatus that was doing, crushing of dissent, right? And so if you look at like the rhetoric on the tech companies before like the state got their hands on it and controlled them, it was completely different than what it ultimately became. And in some sense, this is true of every revolution or evolution in American life, or even broadly in global life, which is you start off as the renegades, you start off as the revolutionaries, and then over time you're bought in and you get institutional power and you begin to talk like the people that you replaced, right? Like the hippies from Woodstock became the bankers and the academic elite. I think it's inevitable. And I think like you can look at Bitcoin, in my view, as an elite revolution where you have a group of old elites and a group of new elites who are fighting with each other over power. And what is power in this sense? Like, what is the fight about? I think the fight in elite circles is always about rule making. So I think that's what the fight is about. Who has the ability to make rules and what the rules are, right? So I think that there's an East Coast, West Coast thing here because some of the call it the orange, you know, like Balaji has this like the blue, the red, the gray, and the orange. And the grays are tech elites, and there's a little orange gray going on this side. And then over here, it's mainly blue. The reds are kind of like, I don't think they know what's going on. Yeah. Like Republicans, for all the agency that liberals give Republicans, they're evil. They know what they're doing. Most of them are very dumb, especially when you talk to them in person, right? So I think, yeah, there's this big elite fight going on between all these different factions. And we are in the very, very, very early stages of that fight.
So if the state is trying to co-opt Bitcoin,
yeah, which they are,
how do you think they're going to go about doing that?
So nationalizing all the MSTR Bitcoin, baby.
Do you think that's like that?
No, well, listen, I don't want to be like, you know, the big conspiracy guy, but like, you know, that's what I would do if I was them. So I just think, what would I do if I was the state and I had control and I had power? I would allow as many Bitcoin as possible to enter the public markets. And then later at a point when it was convenient to me, I would nationalize the Bitcoin and I would pay the holders of those shares back in fake money, printed dollars. Because that's the easiest way for me to get my hands on a large swath of Bitcoin without doing things that are despotic and totalitarian. Yeah, you know,
we're going to talk.
Otherwise, I got to go door to door and harass and torture civilians. Whereas if I give you this offer, which is like-kind treatment on Bitcoin, right? So like-kind treatment is going to make it so that you can put your Bitcoin into an ETF without a taxable event. And then you can margin your Bitcoin so you can run a buy, borrow, die Michael Saylor strategy on your personal life. And it's like, Danny, don't you want to have a mansion and a Lambo and your Bitcoin? And you're like, fuck yeah, I do, right? And then, so that's the carrot, right?
And then in-kind redemption as well. In Australia, we already have an ETF that can do that.
Yeah, but your market is like 8 guys in a clown car.
I mean, I think I've not checked in a while, but I think that ETF has less than 200 Bitcoin in it.
Right. So on the other, that's the carrot, and then the stick is if you want to hold self-custody of your Bitcoin, we are going to continue to make the doxing requirements, the reporting requirements, just completely onerous. And if you slip up, we will throw you in a fucking prison cell, right? And I think that any normal or rational person when faced with those two choices is going to look at the in-kind redemption choice and be like, well, this is the path of a lot less resistance. And I'm able to live actually a better life going this direction. Yeah. So it is a true carrot and it is a true stick. And I think that once you have the Bitcoin in the public markets, then you basically have control of the Bitcoin. You don't have control of the network, but you have control of the money for when you need it.
Yeah, it's funny because like Bitcoiners and Americans love to talk about property rights. Yeah. And that's obviously a huge violation of property rights if they do that with MicroStrategy or whatever that company ends up being. But that's essentially just a way more efficient 6102.
Yes.
Because
100%.
Instead of going door to door, you just go to the big boy and say, give me all your Bitcoin.
It's a smart 6102. And then the people that jumped through the hoops or were able to hide their holdings and have their Bitcoin, they'll go largely under the radar. There'll be like a shadow prohibition at some era of Bitcoin that you'll have to make it through from one side to the other if you have self-custody Bitcoin. I mean, I think this. And if you're a small enough player, you'll be able to make it through that whole thing. But if you're like you're an OG whale, you got 10,000 coins, you ain't making it through unscathed, because they know who you are.
So do you think though the likelihood is they'll ban self-custody?
No. So they won't ban it outright. But there's going to be a fight over the details, and the details matter a lot, right?
So if you're just a whale who has 10,000 Bitcoin self-custody, like why do you think they're in trouble?
Well, I think they're going to ask the government to dox. The government is going to ask the whales, and all Bitcoin holders, but the whales especially, to dox their holdings to the government, right? And then they're going to ask them to, have some pretty significant reporting requirements and comply with some pretty significant guidelines. And if you're a rich enough person, you'll be able to do that without much stress, assuming there isn't something shady in your background, right? Like, were some of these coins from some deals you did some long time ago? Have you been paying your taxes? Did you not pay your taxes for a period of time? Whatever. Those are all hooks they can use to sink into you in order to get you to do what they want. And what they want is basically to have your Bitcoin. Everyone wants your Bitcoin, right? And if you use that as your frame of reference, nothing anybody does in order to get your Bitcoin will surprise you.
Yeah.
And you should assume the worst possible scenario.
The interesting thing there is what happens at like a state level, because we're seeing a lot of changes at the state level now. And back to like the Balaji analogy, I can't remember which one of those groups he talks about, but the fact that if you're under threat like that, Bitcoin is just going to move. They'll just go to El Salvador or somewhere like that. So like, I wonder how the US will balance that in terms of losing rich. It's essentially a wealth tax.
That's
and
why
like, what happens with wealth taxes is everyone leaves.
That's why you can't pressure people too hard. You just have to offer the carrot and say, this is a really juicy carrot.
Yeah.
Don't you want this? And then most people will say, yes, I do.
We're talking about this on stage on Thursday.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of people from the government there. I just don't want you to say this. Don't give them ideas.
The good thing is I don't think they take any of us seriously at the moment, but there's a gravity to this game that's being played that is larger than any of us, right? Now, okay, so we're talking about the co-option of Bitcoin, and it sounds black-pilled, and I want to make it so that it's completely orange-pilled and not black-pilled, which is I believe that this co-option of Bitcoin by the state, and by the way, why will the state co-opt Bitcoin? Why will they want Bitcoin, right? The easy answer here is because they want to maintain their power.
Yeah.
Why did the Roman state co-opt Christianity? Why did they become the Holy Roman Empire? Because they wanted to maintain their power. And the populace was Christian and they couldn't control it any longer. And so they transition, right? And this is something that the state does over and over and over again. The people want wokeness. The state is like, well, maybe wokeness was pushed from on high, but like anything that they need to do in order to maintain control, it's a lot like Wizard of Oz, man behind the curtain shit. The state is not that real, but it looks real, and we all kind of think it's real. So we all kind of believe as if it's real. But if everybody in America stopped paying their taxes tomorrow, there's not a goddamn thing anybody can do about it, right?
Yeah.
But if 10 people stop paying their taxes, they're all going to prison. Yeah. So if me and you decide to do it, we're going straight to the gulag. So I think that the state is going to want to do it in order to maintain power, which makes total sense from their perspective, right? And I think we as Bitcoiners have this sort of responsibility in order to walk this long path. So like sometimes Bitcoiners think, I'm so passionate about Bitcoin that I'm going to literally martyr myself for Bitcoin. I would die for Bitcoin, right? And I have felt that myself. It's probably a crazy, stupid, retarded thing to think or feel about a digital coin, but I have felt that, right? And I understand that other people feel it as well. But I think that you don't martyr yourself for Bitcoin by going out in a sort of stupid, blaze of glory. You martyr yourself for Bitcoin by giving your whole life, not just one day of your life where you die for Bitcoin, which is stupid. You give your whole life in service of this larger goal because you believe that the future is more prosperous, more bountiful on the other side. And so you have to trek along through the dark and dangerous path. You have to walk through the valley of the shadow of death in order to get where you're going, right? And not be corrupted in the process. And that is the work of actually like orange pilling the world, is going through the state. Not battling the state, not trying to live in the mountains with your cold card, but going through the state. And I think that's the process that is happening right now in Bitcoin. And, people, the name of the panel is like, are we becoming sycophants to the state or whatever? And it's like, the state is bending the knee to us. They're genuflecting to us in sort of response to this, proliferation of young people who are politically activated who have significant capital, right? So it makes sense from their perspective, but it's not us genuflecting to them. It's us realizing that we can judo our way out of a fight with a behemoth. And like, is it smart to get trampled to death by the elephant, or is it smart to step out of the elephant's way and let the elephant trample the next guy? I know that people will hear that and be like, that's not like badass, bro. It's not, you know what I mean? Like, come on, man. Like, you sell out, whatever. You're so cucked by the state, dude. Fucking bitch, you little bitch. Fuck you, American hog. I get that. But it's like the reality of the situation is that when you think about how the mass of men will move in unison, this is likely how they will move. They will move through the state. And so the two theses here are you either have a David Goliath battle with the state, in which you find a way for David to win, which is not guaranteed, right? Or you Trojan horse the state. Mm-hmm. And what the co-option of Bitcoin really is a bunch of dudes inside a horse waiting outside the gates of Troy. And the problem is Bitcoiners can't shut the fuck up when they're inside the horse. And it's like, just shut up, dude. We're in the horse, dude. Shut the fuck up. The Trojans are going to hear you, bro. You know?
It's funny though, because like you say, I don't think just Bitcoin's changing. I think Bitcoiners are changing as well.
Yeah.
And so I got into Bitcoin in 2016. You're obviously way before that.
Not that much, only 2015. 1 year before you.
Okay, but I wasn't like a proper Bitcoiner until 2018 because I did all the shitcoining stuff. But when I got into Bitcoin, it was all about censorship resistant money, freedom money. And I think the people that are getting into Bitcoin now are like, I want to buy MSTY, bro.
Yeah.
Like, and there's a real like culture change that's happened.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if the new Bitcoiners feel the same way you do about that.
Well, there's a lot of dollar maximalism going on. Mm-hmm. People want number go up. People want to. Francis Pouliot said this a long time ago, which is that people think leverage is a time machine to being an OG. And so, you know, hey, if MSTR is a little bit of leverage on Bitcoin, MSTU is a lot of leverage on Bitcoin. Call options on MSTU are a lot of leverage on Bitcoin. And I can use that to catch up and get my stack, you know, and I can be a rich person sooner, right?
Yeah. And it works for like 2% of people.
Yeah. I mean, somebody's going to hit that and do a great job, but like that person is a rare specimen, and I salute them for being able to do that. But like most people are not going to be able to do that. And so, yeah, you understand the culture, because if I was coming in as like a 22-year-old broccoli head, you know, they all have the perm. I would do the same thing that they're all doing.
Yeah.
You know, I would have my perm. I would fucking YOLO option trades on Robinhood.
but like, do you think they actually understand what Bitcoin is about? Like, Bitcoin to me was freedom money. I don't know if people think Bitcoin's freedom money now who are coming in at this moment.
I don't think they fully understand it. And I don't think they understand that Bitcoin's not about going fast, it's about going far. And so you want to be like really defensible with your Bitcoin position. And so that does look like conservatism in Bitcoin is, you know, holding spot Bitcoin in self-custody.
Yeah.
That is the most conservative position that a Bitcoiner can take. And you start adding on these other products, you know, you're doing Bitcoin Treasury companies, you know, you're doing call options on MSTR, you know, you're in Bitcoin DeFi products, or you're in, you know, ordinals, or I don't think anybody does ordinals anymore.
No, they're dead.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're doing all these things in order to make more Bitcoin, but at the end of the day, like, those are dangerous things, and you could end up with far less Bitcoin than you otherwise would have if you were just a humble hodler tending to his sats or her sats.
And it's interesting because I don't know how many of those people are doing it to make more Bitcoin rather than just making more fiat.
They want to make more dollars. They don't really know. Like, some of the MSTR guys, I talk to them, and they're not really aware that it's even up in Bitcoin terms, you know, or it's down in Bitcoin terms, depending on the time frame. And they're just thinking, well, what do you mean, bro? Bitcoin goes up, MSTR goes up a lot. And it's like, no, the relationship between the two matters a lot.
Yeah.
Right? Because you want to, at the end of the day, you want to end up with more Bitcoin. That's the game that you're playing. Denominate it, no matter what type of shitcoining you're doing. And make no mistake, like Bitcoin treasury companies are shitcoining, but it's like
like moral shitcoining.
It's like, yeah, Satoshi doesn't mind this kind of shitcoining, you know what I mean? But you're still shitcoining.
You're kind of just passing the purity test.
And you could still get totally fucked participating in that. And so, like, no matter what kind of shitcoining you're doing, the number one cardinal rule of shitcoining is you have to take your profits in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
If you don't take your profits in Bitcoin, you're going to get fucked.
Yeah.
Right?
That happened to me in 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People look at the dollars and they're like, bro, I'm up so many dollars. And it's like, dude, you're down like 5x in Bitcoin terms.
This episode is brought to you by AnchorWatch. Now, one of the things that keeps us Bitcoiners up at night is an idea of a critical error in your Bitcoin cold storage. And this is where AnchorWatch comes in. With AnchorWatch, you're protected by two things. You have their time-locked multi-sig vault, and you have your own A+ rated Lloyds of London backed insurance policy. So you get to hold your keys, and AnchorWatch holds the risk. So whether you're worried about inheritance planning, rent attacks, natural disasters, or just your own silly mistakes, you're fully protected by AnchorWatch. Rates for fully insured custody start as low as 0.55% and are available for individuals and commercial customers located in the US. Speak to AnchorWatch for a quote and for more details about your security options and coverage over at anchorwatch.com. That's anchorwatch.com. This episode is brought to you by Blockware. Would you rather have 1 Bitcoin today or 2 in a few years from now? Silly question. Well, Bitcoin mining is a tried and true method to accumulate more Bitcoin, and over a few years, it can even outperform a normal DCA. Blockware's mining as a service enables you to start mining Bitcoin without lifting a finger. Blockware handles everything from securing the miners to sourcing low-cost power and configuring the pool. They do it all. With multiple data centers across the US, Blockware is the most reliable mining partner in the industry, and mining is one of the most efficient ways to acquire Bitcoin. So click the link in the description to get started today, and if you tell them what Bitcoin Did sent you, you'll get 1 week of free hosting and free electricity for every hosted miner purchased. So click the link in the description or head over to blockwaresolutions.com.
And don't get me wrong, I do think there are people that do get it. Like you introduced me to Punter Jeff Walton.
Yeah.
And I think he does get it. Like, and he's an interesting guy, but from my perspective, as like doing the podcast, normally in like the last couple of bull runs, you see massive influx of retail participants and numbers go crazy. I don't think we've had the same thing this year because I think these treasury companies are taking that mind share. And Jeff is a perfect example because I did a show with him, the numbers crushed.
Yeah.
And then like if you do a Bitcoin show, it's just not the same.
Yeah.
When you say they're a shitcoin, do you think we're going to have like a .com style boom with this?
100%. And by the way, just to clarify, I think everything that's not Bitcoin is a shitcoin. I think the dollar is a shitcoin.
The biggest shitcoin.
Yeah, I think Ethereum is a shitcoin. I think real estate's a shitcoin. I think Rolexes are shitcoins. I think it's all shitcoins.
Nice
right?
Rolex.
Thank you. I think it's all shitcoins, right? And like that is my Bitcoin framework of how I see the world. Is I separate things into stablecoin, shitcoin, and Bitcoin. And really, stablecoin is just a form of shitcoin.
Yeah.
I think the Bitcoin Treasury thing is in its infancy. So it's just now beginning. It's just getting going. MSTR proved the model, and then they democratized the playbook. And all of the other models are accretive to MSTR. All of the other companies that are doing this.
Do you think that's true?
Yeah, of course. Because they buy Bitcoin, which pumps MSTR's Bitcoin price.
Interesting.
It's very simple.
I see that dynamic. But on the other side of that, so I spoke to Jack Mallers recently. And we were talking about this because I see them, I understand your argument, but I see them as also direct competitors because while the Bitcoin going up is good for MicroStrategy, they're also basically in the market trying to outcompete each other on the bonds they're issuing.
Where the competition comes in is the MNAV, so the multiple that they're all getting.
But also the money they're getting coming in. Like if they're both offering, I don't know, $500 million like convertible notes, like there's only a certain amount of demand for those.
My personal opinion is that it's going to be a winner take most market. And I think that at some point there will be a wave of acquisitions between these companies and that, there will probably be one dominant winner, which in my belief, as we sit here right now is MSTR. And that will have 80% market share, and then there will be 20% market share spread out amongst, maybe Jack Mallers' company, maybe David Bailey's company, maybe Metaplanet, maybe a few other things, or whatever they end up being. I don't know what they're going to end up being. And there could be a competitor to MSTR that dethrones MSTR.
I think if there is going to be one, it's probably going to be 21.
It's getting harder and harder to dethrone MSTR though because of the amount of Bitcoin they have.
100%. But like just with the team they're putting together and with Tether and Cantor and SoftBank backing it, like I think they are probably the most likely competitor.
There's definitely a credibility to their offering, and I'm a fan of what Jack is doing, and I probably will be a shareholder. I missed the SPAC pump, so I'm not a shareholder at the moment, but like I probably will be a shareholder in the future.
Well, no one is yet technically.
Yeah. But if you bought CEP, you're up like 5x or whatever. Yeah. So like people crushed on that trade. So good for them and good for Jack and everything. And it's going to be interesting to see it. Their big differentiator is that they're like a pure play, whereas MSTR is not a pure play technically.
No.
But like, let's be honest, like their software company has been completely dwarfed. It's like
obsolete.
It's like a pimple on an elephant's ass. Like nobody even knows what it does. Nobody cares. It just, they have some government enterprise software and then it spits off some fucking cash flow to service the debt on the Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, that part of the company is completely meaningless. So I don't know if being a pure play is enough of a differentiator. But I will say this is like, I've been friends with Jack Mallers for a long time, and if anybody can do it, Jack can do it.
Yeah.
Jack is a special person who can do special things.
And they've got Tether backing it, which is the most profitable company, maybe ever. I don't know.
Tether, it's insane how profitable Tether is.
Make more than BlackRock with like 100 employees. It's wild. But so Do you think the convertible note market, like the people who are like the fixed income on the other side of that, how big do you think that market is? Do you think it's basically, it's got years to run, or do you think it's like...
I don't have data on it. Like I couldn't give you a number, but I do see it getting a lot larger, you know, because I think this trade is super profitable, and it's only people with the Bitcoin lens that understand it. I don't know if you watched the Financial Times piece on MicroStrategy, the one where the woman was talking about her teeth.
I've seen clips. I've not seen the whole. I've obviously seen the teeth.
I watched the whole thing, and the reporting in it is just so stupid. It's just, you know, it is now 2025. There's all these Bitcoin treasury companies that are proliferating, and people are still completely out to lunch. Because they don't think in Bitcoin terms. And in fact, they don't think at all. Like they don't even know that there is a difference between the dollar and Bitcoin.
Yeah.
How does Bitcoin work? I don't know. It's magic or something. That's what the average Financial Times reporter thinks. This isn't the average person. These are people reporting at the largest financial publication on earth, you know, and they don't understand it. So I think the edge in the market is big for people that get it.
But it's wild because like really the way that she tripped up, I've not seen the whole piece, but it seems like the place she tripped up is just not understanding Bitcoin, and then trying to understand MicroStrategy.
Right.
And you're never going to be able to make that leap. But I do think that the amount, it was shocking that they put that piece out, by the way. But the amount of people that are understanding Bitcoin now is certainly growing. I think probably more so in the US than anywhere else.
Yeah.
So like that, I'm just curious how long we have in that arc. Because to me, like, I assume this is like the next euphoria bubble in Bitcoin is on the back of this. And like, what does it look like after? That's what I don't know.
Oh, I mean, $11 trillion of value was wiped out during the dot-com collapse.
Damn.
So
we've got a way to go.
It's a big hangover if it happens. And I do think it's gonna happen, and it's in its infancy because the stories spread, you know, like I put in some money to ASST, which was Vivek's thing. Strive, yeah. And it 5x'd in like 2 days. And then people are like, you got a 5x in 2 days, right? It's shitcoining, right? And, you know, I sold it and I pocketed it in Bitcoin because I'm a Bitcoiner. I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. That is my lens by which I view the world. But a lot of other people are going to come in with that, you know, dangling, that glittering lure of the dollar gains, and they're going to try and make as much money as they possibly can. And the more people that come in, the more the bubble grows. And is there a limit to how many companies in major, you know, global markets can have Bitcoin on their balance sheet? Not really, right? So like theoretically, this is a global bubble that can happen, you know, at a scale that's largely unprecedented. And the Bitcoin juices the returns, right? So it's like, we all knew this would happen eventually, but like now we're here and we're living it. And the devil is in the details with this, where it's like, it's going to get big and then it's going to implode.
Yeah.
You know,
when you say we all knew this was going to happen, I didn't. Like, I thought companies would hold Bitcoin. I didn't see the like debt issuance to buy Bitcoin.
No, because we're all kind of retarded.
Yeah.
we can admit that. Like, we're, you know, we know how to work a cold card, but we don't know a lot about debt financing or like financialization of different assets. You know? Yeah.
But what would be cool, that might be like maturation in this market, or it might be a step back, I don't really know, is if because we talked, I don't know, 18 months ago in Vegas, and we were both saying that we thought Zuckerberg was going to be like one of the next big people to buy Bitcoin. Like, if you're a company of his size, maybe it doesn't make sense to do the debt issuance and buy Bitcoin. Maybe you just buy Bitcoin. And that would seem like a much more healthy market if something like that happened.
For sure. Do
you think that's likely?
I think if anyone's going to compete with Saylor, it has to be somebody larger than Saylor. So Meta is a prime target to compete with Saylor, I do think. They haven't, though, and it's hard to turn a company that's that large. It's like turning a battleship, you know?
Yeah.
So like, is Meta going to be able to... You know, when Saylor did the first MicroStrategy offering, he had to tender to his other shareholders and say, hey, I have a plan to do this Bitcoin shit, and you're either with me or, you know, you're against me, and you can dump your shares now if you wish.
And he offered them at a premium to
he offered them at a premium, and a lot of people took it. And, you know, those people, that's one of the worst financial decisions of their career, right? But they took it, and I think Zuck would have to do a similar thing. And you'd have to jettison some of your old investors in order to get these new investors. And what is your differentiation against MicroStrategy? Because it's like, if we're looking at Zuck versus Michael Saylor, do I believe that Mark Zuckerberg is a better Bitcoiner than Michael Saylor? No, I don't.
No, but the interesting thing is he wouldn't have to take on leverage, take on debt to buy Bitcoin. He could just put some of the treasury into Bitcoin.
Because they're so rich. They're such a rich company.
And if he did that, would he still have to go out to the shareholders? I don't know if he would. Like, it's just a treasury decision at that point.
He has majority control of that company, so I don't think he has to go to the shareholders, which is why he's one of the candidates who could do it.
Yeah.
But still, you know, there's a reality of like he can do things versus like what are the ramifications of doing those things in the real world, you know?
Yeah.
So there'd be ramifications if he was, investors would leave. They'd leave and they'd go do something else with their money.
It's interesting though, because you say investors would leave, but I think a hell of a lot more investors would come because of that.
I think so too, which is why I think they should do it if they're going to compete with MSTR.
Yeah.
You know, if anybody's going to compete with MSTR. Right now though, it's like MSTR is kind of an unstoppable like runaway freight train.
Yeah.
Like
nothing stops that train.
Nothing's going to stop them from getting to 1 million Bitcoin, or at least it doesn't seem so at this point, you know.
Do you think as Bitcoiners, we're adding to the potential co-option of Bitcoin by buying things like this?
Yeah. Yes.
Do you think we have a moral obligation to not?
No.
Why?
I think because it's the reason I had a moral objection to shitcoining is because it was a lie. It was all premised on a lie, right? So like people were and I was watching people get suckered in and lose their life savings because others were lying to them, right? And that felt morally wrong to
100%.
participate in. With something like a Bitcoin Treasury company, it's like, yeah, this is stock speculating, like pure and simple. And maybe you're going to do well, and maybe you're not going to do well. Us participating in it, is it immoral? I don't think so. I think it's benign. You know,
even if it ends up with that Bitcoin being captured by the state.
Yeah, because you know there's different failure paths for how the Bitcoin could be captured by the state, and like the other path is you being tortured in your home in front of your children. Never forget that the state can kill you in front of your children at any time in your living room, you know? So like that path is a lot worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think, man, it's really, I think it would be overly presumptuous to assume that any of us can affect the outcome that greatly, you know?
Yeah.
These things are inevitable whether we participate or not, because there's an ocean of cheap, easy capital out there.
Even if something's inevitable, though, it can still be morally the wrong choice.
Yeah. I don't know that it is. Do you think it is?
I don't know either.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking you.
Would you put it in like immoral, benign, or moral? Which camp would you put it in?
Gut reaction without properly thinking about it, it's probably somewhere between benign and immoral.
I would say it's firmly benign.
Yeah,
in my opinion,
might be right.
You know? Because I think it, you know, there is an argument to be made that it.
Don't get me wrong, it's not immoral to go and buy MicroStrategy. I don't think that. It's a tricky one because if it does lead to the capture and co-option of Bitcoin at a nation state level, we should do everything we can to prevent that. But I don't think people are acting immorally to buy it now. So I don't know what I think about that. Maybe this needs to be further down the path for it to be an immoral thing.
Should we do everything we can to prevent the capture of Bitcoin, or should we accelerate the capture of Bitcoin?
Yeah, it's a fucking hard question.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, right? Like, because it might be a necessary precondition that you have to go through the state in order to subsume and supersede the state.
Yeah.
It's this game of like the state thinks it's subsuming us and we think we're subsuming the state.
Yeah.
And
only one of them can be right.
I don't know who's right.
Yeah.
But it's exciting. That's why I'm here all the time.
Yeah.
You know? Which one is it? I don't know. And it's going to be it's going to take the rest of our lives to find out.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a really fucking hard question because anyone here who's listening who owns MicroStrategy, I don't think you're immoral, but I do also think
I own MicroStrategy, by the way.
Yeah, well, I don't think you're immoral, but like I don't know the answer to that question. Do you know, I might ask Eric Kaysen that question on stage because I'd like his opinion on that.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. When we talk about co-option of Bitcoin, like we talked about this from a state capture of actual Bitcoin. Do you think there's a risk of consensus, a risk to consensus?
Yeah.
And how would that play out?
Well, I mean, I think there's probably already government agents inside Core already, right? You would have to be kind of dumb to think there's not. Now, I don't have
the only reason I
don't have a list of names to give you, but
yeah,
go ahead.
The only reason I was hesitant when you said that is because I don't want to talk about this, but all the op return drama and like all the shit that's being slung at Core, I think is massively unfair. I think Core are an amazing team, but at the same time, I think you may be right.
Well, everything in Bitcoin that has been fought over since the block size war has been completely inconsequential. All of it. Ordinals is inconsequential. Opportune is inconsequential. Should we do Bitcoin? Should we call Sats Bitcoins? The most inconsequential.
But also no.
Yeah, but also no. But the most inconsequential. And, if you think about some of the CIA handbook stuff on how they disrupt, revolutionary organizations, it is to get them bogged down in minutia. And we do seem to be bogged down in minutia. So now, does Bitcoin need to change imminently? No, at least not right now. Or there's no clear answer on that and what the change might be. So I don't know, but a lot of these arguments around Bitcoin over the last 4 or 5 years seem to be complete asinine bullshit to me.
Yeah,
I
agree with that 100%.
Yeah,
it's funny though, when you say they're inconsequential and you're kind of alluding to CIA involvement or whoever.
Yeah. They're involved, by the way. They're in this hotel right now.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
They're probably listening to this conversation.
Yeah, of course. Hey guys.
But I don't know if you put it down to malice in that sense, or if this is just another case of a standing army fighting themselves. We don't have anything to fight about. So
that's bureaucracy and minutia. I mean, standing armies will fight themselves, and it's the easiest way to divide people is through the tyranny of petty differences. There's this line I was thinking about when the professor comes in when everyone's fighting in Futurama, and he goes, "You people and your slight differences disgust me." That's what it is inside of Bitcoin. It's how dare you think we can have the op return be full of this much arbitrary data, you piece of shit. It's what? Who talks like this?
Yeah. But funnily, Core is actually rife for something like this because these are amazing developers, do amazing work, who get paid through grant systems and get paid shit.
Yeah.
They could all go to a Google and earn 5 times the amount they're earning through grants to work on Bitcoin Core.
Let me give you an even more less clandestine, less espionage, version of reality, which is that the state is going to have a significant amount of Bitcoin if they go through with their, the Bitcoin Act, the Cynthia Lummis Bitcoin Act. They're going to buy 1 million Bitcoin or whatever it ends up being. And the state is going to have a significant financial incentive to keep Bitcoin stagnant. Because they don't want to fuck up their investment.
Yeah,
right.
It becomes a national security issue.
It becomes a national security risk. And once it's a national security risk, then the spooks come out to play, So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This op return drama, I agree with you.
Also, though, Bitcoin might need to ossify.
I think it might have already
So I don't know about that either. It's hard to navigate your way through these things.
Well, the op return drama has made me think maybe Bitcoin's already ossified. If we're arguing this much about a change that doesn't really do anything, may not even be filters, in my opinion, just don't work. I understand the argument of just because they don't always work doesn't mean you should get rid of them. I get it. But I think the fact that there's been this much drama about this, we might have just ossified already.
Yeah, I just, people keep asking me about stuff like this. They during the ordinals thing, everybody was like, "What do you think about ordinals?" I was like, "I don't care." And then during the opportune thing, everybody's like, "What do you think about opportune?" I don't care.
Yeah.
Do you think Sats should be called Bitcoins? I don't care, but also no. Yeah, I mean, it's very. Bitcoin takes its roots from civil engineering culture, right? I've talked about this before, and so you do have to be very hesitant about what you add or bolt onto Bitcoin. But right now, I don't know. I mean, these things just seem like petty squabbling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. We're going to get to the point where we actually need to make changes to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
There's a bug in there.
And we're going to have an entire culture of inertia around doing so.
Yeah.
Which we already do.
Because there's a bug in there that we all know exists, the time code bug or whatever it is, that needs a hard fork, I believe, at least in the way that we're looking at it right now. What happens then? Do we just all agree and move on? Because otherwise Bitcoin's dead essentially, or is there still going to be
I think there's a baked-in assumption from some OGs that we would agree on simple things, and I think that assumption is naive at this point in time.
I agree.
It was true 8 years ago.
Yeah.
It's not true any longer. And also, there's a very real consequence. This, by the way, you don't need the CIA for this, but there was a very real consequence to the block size wars in that everybody has PTSD from the SegWit upgrade.
100%.
Yeah. And then Taproot was kind of
just made it worse.
Didn't go that great either.
I'm not saying it made Bitcoin worse. It made the PTSD worse.
There were some unintended consequences that people hadn't thought through with Taproot, and then that caused people to double down on their PTSD.
Yeah.
And most of the talk, by the way, that was the reason there were, in my opinion, as a layman, but I think the reason there were unintended consequences with Taproot is because we spent so much time talking about activation and hardly any time talking about Taproot itself.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Which led
It was
to a
all
mistake.
about speedy trial.
Which led to a mistake. And those mistakes can be things that are exploits in the future.
And so then you get onto the argument of like CTV and stuff like this. And I just can't see how anyone ever agrees. Like personally, I think CTV would be a cool thing to have in Bitcoin. But I don't think it's going to happen at this point.
Well, we need some type of what's the fuck covenants. We need some type of covenants, you know. And I like Jeremy and I like CTV, but I'm not. I'm just one of the Bitcoin think boy cheerleader guys. So like, can I really tell you which is the best covenant? No, not really.
Me neither. And when I said CTV, I guess I broadly meant covenants more than that exact one. But I just don't think it's going to happen now. I think it's over.
There's a lot of these ideas that are waiting in the wings for a moment in time when they're necessary or needed. And that moment could still be there. As of right now, it's not there yet. So why jump the gun? You know what I mean? Do we need like one thing, for instance, is like with CTV, from a broader like enhanced security standpoint, we have Miniscript and hardly anybody's built on it. And that is, expressibility on the main chain, that just was sitting around doing nothing. And it was created by some of our most, our biggest geniuses like Andrew Polstra.
Yep.
And it just, nobody was touching it. Nobody was building on it. And then people started to. And now there's more Miniscript stuff going on. But we haven't even maxed out the design space we have in Bitcoin currently. 100%. And people are constantly fighting about their minute change they want or their big change they want.
Yeah. I only know a handful of people that would probably truly understand Miniscript. Rob obviously being one of them. And that's the only product I can think that's been built with Miniscript.
Yeah.
I mean, there may be others, but
there's a lot. There's a lot you can do with Miniscript, but broadly, it's like it creates more advanced time locking. Yeah.
So, like, when we get to co-option, is there any other issue that you foresee?
I think the biggest risk is that we just become the fucking thing we fought against. It's
complacency to me.
Apathy is the biggest risk to Bitcoin.
I've said this quote about 10 times on the podcast, but I think it's brilliant. Thomas from PubKey said to me, "We're all going to be rich and depressed because the project failed," and
that could very well happen.
I think if you try to sort of give a probability to the outcomes, I think that one's quite high.
By the way, so let me build on Thomas's thought here, which is I think that that is a necessary step to where we're going. I think there will be a moment where it looks as if Bitcoin was completely co-opted and captured. And what we need to remember in that moment is that Bitcoin is a wild beast that just simply needs to be uncaged. And that's it. Right now, the problem we have is that there's a global cabal that has all the guns and makes all the rules, and they say what money is and is not. So people say things like about medium of exchange, and they're like, why isn't Bitcoin being used as medium of exchange? All these Bitcoiners are paying with credit cards. They should be paying with Lightning Network. Oh, you love Bitcoin so much. How can you help it? Well, the tax treatment doesn't allow you to pay with Bitcoin, right? And nobody wants to do all that mental math for, to open themselves up to a potential audit or something, just so they can be a good ideologue Bitcoiner and be like, I paid in Bitcoin, right?
I mean, let's be honest. So they're doing a thing at the conference this year, which is I think they're trying to do the most payments in a certain time frame. I forget how many they're going for, but it's obviously everyone's going to be paying with Lightning. Realistically, let's say there's 5,000 people buy something with Lightning. How many do you think are actually doing tax on that? It's probably close to zero.
Oh, zero.
Yeah.
Zero.
So but I understand as a business, no one can do that.
Yeah.
And so
well, if you're paying for a hot dog or a beer or whatever. Yeah. I mean, the government is not going to, they're not going to come for you and throw you in a prison cell over that. But if you're doing significant payments, you owe somebody $100,000 and you pay them and you do it in Lightning or whatever and you don't report it, that's going to be a big problem.
100%. So do you think really Bitcoin then has to transition from being almost like freedom money to captured to be freedom money again?
Yes, absolutely.
And how does
that is the process I think is happening.
So do all the issues I have about Bitcoin being forgotten about as freedom money, you think I just need to park them?
No, I'm not saying that, because it's important that we fight the whole way through,
So the risk there is that what if no one remembers? What if no one remembers Bitcoin was once freedom money?
That's bad. Then we failed.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have to fight every battle as they come up, especially legally, every legal battle. We have to continue advocating for our cause the entire time. But we also may have to make peace with a prohibition era, if one occurs.
A prohibition area where we'll all be very rich.
Very rich, but the freedom has gone down.
Mm-hmm.
We're all kind of captured, And then eventually, like always happens, people die.
That's inevitable.
Well, yeah, of course. I'm not saying we kill people. I'm saying people naturally die, and their ideas die with them. Death is, as Steve Jobs said, nature's change agent. And so, there's this old saying that change only happens one funeral at a time. And I think, as we go through this process, the people that are above us, who are the sort of fiat cantillionaire class who run this system, they die off. And we get about half the seats at the table of power, and we use those half the seats to make meaningful change. And the big idea that we're bringing to the table is same rules for everybody. Same rules for everybody sounds simple. It sounds like the way that all the Western democracies work, except we all know it's not. There aren't the same rules for everybody. And every sort of modern political movement is a fiat power game in order to get favor for this group ahead of another group. Whether you're, I don't want to name all the groups because then people have a bunch of feelings about it. But every group wants to be closer to the money printer, right? And those groups want to advantage themselves over others. We are coming with a radical new idea, which is same rules for everybody. One fair rule set to rule them all. Not same outcome for everybody, not same amount of Bitcoin for everybody, same rules. The Bitcoin network will process your transactions no matter who you are. North Korean dissident, Amish Mennonite, fucking Australian no-gun cuck, American pro-gun nut, whatever. And that's a powerful idea. And the fact that we can actually enforce it in code is the new thing, because it was the same idea. By the way, it's the same egalitarian idea that humanity always comes up with time and time again. And there's always a new city upon the hill. And America was our last city upon the hill. And it was an experiment. Well, guess what? The fucking experiment failed. Benjamin Franklin left the Constitutional Congress, and they asked him what he left us with. And he said, a republic, if you can keep it. Well, we didn't. We fucked it up. There's no republic anymore. We are ruled by a fucking oligarchy, right? And a shadow government. And I think that the Constitution in large part is one of the most beautiful documents that has ever been produced, but it's a shitcoin because it can't be enforced. And you can attack it on the basis of language. Now, is Bitcoin a shitcoin in the long term as well? Probably. There will probably be some new technology that supersedes Bitcoin, and you will use it to attack Bitcoin and destroy Bitcoin. But for the next 300, 400, 1,000 years, I think we have something that can't be corrupted. And the reestablishment of the sacred is really the heart of what's happening here with Bitcoin. So are we going to go through a period where we're persecuted? Yeah, fuck yeah. But it's going to be a weird one where we're super rich and we're sitting around drinking fancy wine and being we're so persecuted.
We already do that.
That is what we do. That is what we do. But I think if we continue to hold the sacred, we will be able to install the sacred at the end of the whole thing, or whenever there's an opportunity to do so. And I'm talking about permanently install it, for everybody.
I can't think of a better way to end the show. But before we do end, though, I feel like a doomer all the time because, while people are, in my opinion, being sycophants of the state, I always want to ask these questions. I think that's maybe the most rational outlook that I've heard. So what are the things then to be optimistic about?
Getting hella rich, bro. No. I think the rational things to be optimistic about are just the beautiful world we're going to be able to create with Bitcoin and, all of the things that we're going to be able to revivify in society. The new things, the old things. Bitcoin is largely both progressive and restorative. So it's giving us back things we lost, and it's bringing new things into existence. I think Bitcoin accelerates, global technology adoption and invention. I think Bitcoin increases global GDP. If you let's say we Bitcoinize the entire world and we increase global GDP by 1.5 1.5% a year. Okay, it doesn't sound like a lot. Like that's what your whole fucking revolution was about, 1.5% a year. Over the course of 100 years, that takes humanity from, Kardashev type 0 to possibly Kardashev type 1 on a massively accelerated timeline. So it's our destiny to the stars quicker. It creates a defensibility and a decentralization of human beings. Like there's this moment in time we're in where we're all stuck on this planet with each other and we're squabbling over skin color and people have nuclear codes and it's so stupid and we're so close to destruction. But if we can get through this bottleneck in human history, we can make it out the other side where there's trillions of humans living on all these different solar systems, all these different planets, right? And once we have the tools and technology to do that, then we're going to be in a much better like post-scarce timeline where, the light that is human consciousness is spread as far and wide across the galaxy as it possibly can be. And while Bitcoin is not that thing, Bitcoin is the thing that gets us to that thing. So that is super exciting. And the reason I've chosen to like spend my life on that,
Bitcoin to the stars.
100%.
Fucking love you, HODL. Thank you for this, man. And thank you for taking me shooting yesterday. That was fun.
Dude, we got to go again.
I'm excited for this panel.
I'm going to do this. Roll the footage.
Now
you got to show the footage of Danny shooting. Hit. That's 3 in a row.
I don't think I've been holding this.
Oh, yeah. You should do that. All right, man.
Thank you for this. Appreciate it.
Of course, always.